Everything here is political.
Okay.
So that music that you hear there is that's politics in action. That's it's ownership of the airspace.
Yeah.
All these things which seem a bit odd for somebody who's from the outside.
Yeah.
The Palestinian shops which are here, which are the only Palestinian shops you'll see open today. The worst thing for them in Hebron is this music. So even in terms of that, everything here is political. That's the Tomb of Patriarchs. So this is it. This is the reason for everything we're talking about today. The building itself is Herodian. It's 2,000 years old. The only Herodian building which has survived in its entirety.
The period of King Herod.
Exactly, the period of King Herod. The bottom part, the top parts are later additions. Inside is already like Ottoman Empire type style. This is the Jewish entrance, and what do I mean Jewish entrance? The place functions as a mosque and as a synagogue for already since 1967. It functions as a mosque and as a synagogue. Up until 1994, up until the Goldstein massacre, you could roam relatively freely from the mosque side to the synagogue side. That's how Baruch Goldstein was able to go into the mosque side. Since the massacre, there's a special unit, two of the soldiers you see here now, special unit which was created just to man the Tomb of Patriarchs from the border police. They're the only ones who are allowed in the building with guns. There's a wall erected between the mosque side and the synagogue side. No side can enter the other side except for 10 days a year where each religion gets the whole building to themselves. So what you're seeing here now, Saturday, Sunday is Passover. That's one of the, it's called in army jargon, it's called extraordinary Jewish days or extraordinary Muslim days. So extraordinary Jewish days, that's happening this week. That's why I said closed military zone for left-wingers or human rights, whatever, activists next week here. Because thousands of supporters of the Jewish community in Hebron are going to be here next week. There are going to be big celebrations, and what you're seeing now is in preparation for that.
Supporters of the settlement?
Supporters of the settlement. Now, add on to that, the settlement was founded in 1968 of Passover, so we're going to be commemorating, remembering, celebrating 40 years as a settlement in a couple of days' time, so this is like big time for Hebron.
Okay.
Let's continue walking. Alan Slam. Okay, so we just saw the Jewish entrance to the Tomb of Patriarchs. This is a Muslim entrance. Not this. On the left, behind this red and white barrier. That's where Muslims are allowed to walk. Every Muslim who enters the Tomb of Patriarchs has to cross the border police and has to show ID, relevant ID. Not anybody can enter, just if you have a permit. They're not allowed here in this area. Palestinians aren't allowed here in this area. Only behind the red and white line.
Okay.
Now,
how do they get to that red and white now?
This 100-meter strip of road is the only road that we're going to be walking on today, where Palestinians and Israelis are allowed to walk relatively side by side.
Yeah.
Past that, it's completely the Israeli military terminology is sterilized. That's past that line. Now, if I just said Palestinians aren't allowed to come here, so how come these Palestinian shops are open? These shops have specific permits for the owners to open their shops, given to them by the Israeli military authority here. That means that they cannot sell to Palestinians because Palestinians aren't allowed here. So the only people they can sell to are international groups who come. Most groups who come here come with a settlement and don't buy there. So that's basically the situation that they're in now. You're going to have to use your imagination a bit, because the road that you see in front of you, again, if you picture sort of a Middle Eastern market with everything which has to do around that, that's what we're entering now. We're entering the main market, which functioned as the main market not only for Hebron, 166,000 Palestinians, but also for all the villages in the area. So it's close to like 400,000 people. This was the main market.
For years and years? For
years and years, since like the 1910s. This place this place functioned as market for Palestinians since 1994. Baruch Goldstein massacre, separation policy. The idea is to close off everything. So you see these barriers on the holiday itself. Palestinians and Israelis won't be walking together. Israelis will have this road, Palestinians will be forced to walk behind that. So now they're a bit more lax.
What an irony that the Baruch Goldstein massacre.
Yeah.
You know, we're also, I mean, most of Israel is very ashamed of that, but that the result
Yeah.
It's a
Screw
clamp.
them.
It's a clamping down.
Right, it's clamping down. Right. Well, of
results
course,
were
Alan,
Yeah.
it grows for the reasoning is reasons of retribution, whatever, their fear of retribution, fear of revenge, security reasons, and so on and so forth. But that's the reason. We'll stop here in the shade for a second. So this is maybe the toughest part of the Shuhada Road in terms of the logistics of the way things work. Meaning it's still closed for Palestinian pedestrians, but as opposed to what we saw down the street where Palestinians have specific permits to leave their houses, here they've actually been locked in. The front door's actually been locked for the past 7 years. So Palestinians living here on the second floor have actually not seen the front door on the outside of their own street for around 7 years. They get out, well, it used to be that they got out through the roof and through a hole in the back. Now they made it a bit more comfortable and there's a hole in the wall where they go out. I just want to sort of play that out. Behind that, they're still not allowed to bring their cars. So that means everything, first of all, kids live here and elderly people live here. The only way they get in and out of their house, forget about the dignity of getting outside your own front door. The only way they get outside of their house is through the back. Groceries, everything by foot. Changing gas tanks, changing ovens, changing refrigerator, everything on your back. Medical emergencies, no ambulances will treat them here because it doesn't matter because the door's bolted shut anyway. So that means they have to carry people on their backs for medical emergencies.
What, he wasn't happy?
No, yeah, he was a bit unhappy with my presence here. He's one of the settlers here in Hebron. We do tours here quite a lot, so people know who I am. From this point on, Palestinians are not allowed to pass. As you can see, Palestinians live here. So how does that work? These ones specifically have specific permits to enter and exit their own houses. When they exit their house, they're not allowed to go that way. They're only allowed to go that way.
Yeah.
And then out. Now, what do Palestinians usually do? They go out of here and then they turn to, as you can see, they turn to the right. After this right, they go back. Then there's a checkpoint. They get out of this sterilized area, and then they're in their own zone. The soldier serving here, the battalion serving here now, is not your regular army battalion. It's called the 50th Battalion of the Nachal Brigade. Almost all the soldiers who are serving here now come from semi-socialist or socialist youth movements, mainly anti-occupation youth movements in Israel.
Why?
Okay, so Hebron is a very complex city, and the soldiers who are manning here, you need to have a very specific type of soldier. On one hand, he can't have a civilian attitude, which is why reservists don't serve here at all. Only conscript, 18-year-old conscript. The last time reservists were here, meaning Israelis have mandatory conscript service. And after you get out of the army, you do a month of reserve service till you're 40. But reservists never come here because you can't. The people with a civilian attitude, I imagine it would be hard for them to man this kind of situation. So it functions on 18-year-olds on one hand. On the other hand, units such as mine, like Golani, haven't been here since the year 2000 because they're too rough for this neighborhood, and you want to have politically correct soldiers. So usually
who have a good relationship with Palestinians, or at least don't.
Who are look, it's who do what's called in Israel enlightened occupation. They talk about things more, and they're a bit nicer. That's not look. We're coming out with a booklet of testimonies in a couple of days from Hebron over the past 2 years. I'll explain what that. It's testimonies I'll talk about later, but the stories here are as rough as it gets.
Okay.
So we're not talking only about nice guys who feel bad at checkpoints. You have here the most sadistic behavior that I've encountered in the military, which and the extreme cases. Even with these guys as well. But so that's something that needs to be dispelled. But in general, these guys are a bit calmer, and that's the way policy works here. So Nachal 50th Battalion sits here all the time. And our organization also came out of this unit, so that's why we have good feelings with them. And we view also, other than the fact that it's important for me on a personal level, I like to be nice to anybody that I see here, regardless of who he is. All these soldiers we view as future members of our organization.
Okay.
So,
did you ever get harassed by the settlers when you bring groups here?
Around 50% of the tours. Yeah, quite a bit.
50%? Wow. Yeah.
What? Yeah,
Just
quite a lot.
verbal-
Well, yeah. For us, it's a sign of success.
Okay.
So this is the main meat market in Hebron, or what used to be the main meat market. This, I don't know, this wreckage here. Behind that is the Israeli settlement Avraham Avinu, Abraham, our forefather, because again, there's this biblical motif happening here. Now, in 1994, this place was completely closed down by military warrant from Palestinians and has been closed down since. And again, as it was said before, the people who suffered most after the Baruch Goldstein massacre were the Palestinians living in Hebron. Of course, from a security perspective, it makes sense as well. Now, as opposed to this is still closed by military warrant, but as opposed to what we saw on the street tomorrow, and that means it's temporary, but as opposed to what we saw on the Shuhada Street, if this place was to be open tomorrow, there's nothing really much to open because everything's been demolished from the inside, and this has been a very, very, very long process of demolishing this area that has been done by settlers, and you have to use your imagination here as well. If you see what happens here is that imagine that this used to be a shop building, and everything is closed from the outside. Now the back of the shop is adjacent to the settlement. So what settlers mainly use, like the UCC here, come with sledgehammers at night. They destroy the back of the property, go inside, completely ruin the infrastructure from the inside. Once everything's completely destroyed from the inside, they just can open the front doors, and there you have these facts on the ground that we're talking about. This is not a process which happens in a week or in a couple of months. This is like a long process of years.
So these kids here are Jewish settlers, kids?
Yeah, they're settlers. Well, if they're outside,
Now,
if they're outside of this area, that means they're Jewish.
Now, 100, feet up the street, there were Palestinian kids on the street,
Right.
so they never interact in any way, or?
Yeah, they do a lot. Look, the kids. The most violent part of the settler community are children, for a couple of reasons. First of all, because they're children and they grew up in this situation.
Yeah.
And we, at least when they're children, I don't view them as the most responsible here.
Yeah.
The second reason is that kids under the age of 12 or under the age of 14 more in Israel can't be held accountable in a court of law. Okay. So their parents actually send them to do perpetrate acts of violence against Palestinians because nobody can do anything. So I've actually been harassed here as a soldier and as an activist by settlers when the father actually yells, only kids under 14 can attack. So this sort of way of perpetuating violence. But that's very classic of Hebron now.
Okay, but there's the fact that they live in the same town, same block even, doesn't lead to any kind of harmony.
Harmony?
No.
Look,
no. It's all
settlers who live here don't live here because it's comfortable, right?
Yeah.
They're ideologically or religiously, fundamentally motivated. They're political activists 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
They're not people who came here to make friends. They're people who came here to take over the city.
Right.
And to be honest, they'll tell you the same exact sentence.
Right.
Okay.
It's quite different from most of, like the settlement we passed, Efrat. I mean, it's the character of the settlers here is very intense. No, I would say Hebron is its own thing. I mean, I never heard it described the way you did so well in terms of the only settlement within an urban setting.
Right. Well, at least you count East Jerusalem.
Yeah.
But, that's
No. Right. No, because there are other
Right.
extremist areas,
Right.
like in Samaria, the
Right.
Shomron, where you have what are called the hilltop kids, and you have these really extremist settlements. Like, not all the settlements are uniform in terms of the extremism of the people who live there.
No.
Yeah.
Some really just move for economic reasons, quality of life, that kind of thing.
I mean, this is a bit about the wholesale market. This is the wholesale market of Hebron, or what used to be the Palestinian wholesale market of Hebron. Same story as what we've been seeing up until now. 1994, it was closed down for Palestinians, closed military zone. 2001, after a terrorist attack towards Israelis, or an Israeli 10-month-old baby, Shalhevet Pass, sniper who killed an Israeli baby here. As a sort of revenge to that, 13 families infiltrated the wholesale market and started living there. This was in 2002. Israeli Supreme Court deemed it illegal in 2002. Took 4 years to implement the decision out of fear of the settlers, military fear of the settlers. They were taken out in 2006, went back in, taken out again this past summer, 2007. 2007. What year are we in? 2007.
Yeah.
And that's why you can see everything. The whole infrastructure here is demolished because the military realized the only way to make sure the settlers are out and stay out, and this doesn't become like this sort of ongoing process to completely demolish the property. Needless to say, it's demolished Palestinian private property who are not going to get compensation for it, but
Right.
they haven't been here in 15 years anyway,
Okay.
so it doesn't really matter now.
Right.
Whereas if we're doing sort of the short route, maybe I'll just, here's a point, maybe I'll explain a bit about what we do here. Look, and 5 years ago I was that guy, or 6 years ago.
Literally in this area?
Yeah, pretty much. I was a higher rank, but I was that guy.
Yep.
Breaking the Silence came out of here. Soldiers who served here thought this place was nuts. When what drove them, I think what got us most upset, I wasn't part of this group at the time because the unit that I served in, we didn't really talk about things. But this group, as I said, it's a special battalion, and they do have these conversations. Right? So they were talking about how this place is insane, and maybe what's most insane about it is that Israelis really don't know. And I think in the beginning of Intifada, Israelis even knew less about what was happening here, and they didn't. Forget politics and forget what should happen. Everybody in Israel knows what the solution is, but nobody knew, what a checkpoint is or what the occupation looks like from the inside, and it was driving them crazy. So when they got out of the military in 2004, the army gives you some money to start your life. So they took in all that, they pooled in their money together, and they collected pictures which they took during service, and they made an exhibition in Tel Aviv. It was like a one-time thing. It wasn't the beginning.
I remember the email.
It was.
I remember getting that email.
So
this
it was,
exhibition. That's wild.
It was a big deal.
It was. Yeah, it was a big deal at the time.
Being informed that this exhibition was taking place and these soldiers, and you know what? Until you just said it, I didn't realize that was.
So we didn't. I don't think anybody thought that this was going to be like a long-term thing, and that I think it was more of a gut instinct of just talking to your family, so to speak, in the open. Coming out and saying this is what the occupation is, and this is what happened as a result. Around 10,000 people came to the exhibition, but what happened, which was important now, I can say for us, people such as myself, who served in different units at different times, came and saw the exhibition. And we said, we have our stories as well, and there really needs to be some place where we collect this as a database. Because the deputy brigade commander of this area came and he saw the exhibition as well, and he said, you call this abuse, but I call it, growing up. And we said, well, if this is what the initiation process to Israeli society is today, going through this kind of thing, so at least we want our parents to know about it. And what we've been doing up until today is just collecting those testimonies, collecting stories from soldiers. So
how do you do that?
Well, we meet a soldier. To give you an example, you see these guys walking around, and they start recognizing our faces. Sometimes they guard us, and they hear the tours. It's just an example of Hebron. It works in other places as well. And they ask, what your name is, where you're from, that kind of thing. You saw that down the street, and then you have a conversation. They say, well, I had this thing happen to me, I had that thing that happened to me, and then you get together, you meet over a cup of coffee, and you get consent, and you take out a tape recorder, and all the people who interview, we're all ex-combat, so we all know the deal, and we all know the jargon. We're not, we know how to. We're pretty trained in that field, and what we do is we just collect stories and we publish them. So in that way, we're just like a media agency.
Stories like in print, or
stories in print. So up until today, we've talked around 500 soldiers. Let me tell you, when you come in as a soldier, you don't give 3 years, 4 years in my case of service. It's not one story. That's at least 15. So we've got thousands of stories of soldiers. Every single unit which has served in the territories, we've had at least one person come and speak with us from the most elite. Now, what is a story? What is a story? What constitutes a story? Basically, gut instinct for us, what makes us feel bad. So it's not necessarily international human rights, but it can be anywhere from looting, which happens daily at checkpoints. Small looting, such as cigarettes or masbachot, those prayer beads, that kind of thing, happens every day. All over the place, or destruction of property, abuse of civilians, but just also explaining day-to-day things. And then, the deeper you dig, the harder the stories. So now we're already talking about stories of murder, of quite a bit actually, either by order.
About what?
Murder. Stories of murder.
What do you mean?
Well, this is what we found out. since it's found out. This is common knowledge if you're inside, but sort of, if you're not inside, you're not in the loop, so you don't know about the beginning of Second Intifada. But not only. So 2000, the Intifada starts. Israeli military understands that it's going to be a very dynamic, war. And it's not worth it to write the rules of engagement. Rules of engagement is a little booklet you get when you're in the military that tells you when you're allowed to fire and when you're not allowed to fire. But Israel never wrote those down. Israeli military from 2000 to 2006. And the orders were actually given orally. So in many cases, completely illegal by Israeli law. So for example, we would get my unit got ordered to kill anybody who's out in the street from 8 at night till 6 in the morning. Or a popular order, for example, all over the Second Intifada.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You were given orders to kill anyone out in the street? You mean in this area?
No, well, this was in Nablus, but it was given in Jenin, and the time was a time when you have either full curfew or semi-curfew. Curfew means that Palestinians aren't allowed to be outside of their house at all, other than 2 hours once every 2 weeks. Otzel. That's the terminology in Hebrew. Semi-curfew means they're not allowed to be outside of the house at night. Now, what happens when they go out anyway? That's the big question, right? So some units were given orders to shoot to kill anybody's out. So we put out, I think, most of the information we don't put out, we don't put as breaking the silence. It's just articles that come out in the media for many reasons. That's Itamar Ben-Gvir.
I think my battery's flashing,
No
so we only have a
problem.
few minutes left. So
Sure.
what else do we need to really get in here?
So close that. I'll show you something else.
All right.